What's your sign? What's your sign, baby? What's your sign? What's your sign?
Welcome to What's Your Sign? I'm Julia Loken.
I'm Stevie Goldstein.
And I'm the pomegranate of this podcast.
Oh, yeah. What a palm.
It's a good season.
With a little brie.
It's my favorite fall fruit. I love it.
A little brie on a little cracker toast. I had that once at I think they've resumed it, the Trader Joe's tasting, when they give you the little stamps. And they gave me little toast with the brie and palm. And then I copied that for 2 weeks because they're my influencers.
So good. I don't like the prepackaged ones. I'm really picky about them because my mom
in the cup.
Yeah, they always taste fermented to me.
Mm-hmm.
I got a really good one this week. I feel like I'm really good at picking them because my mom has trees, so I know which ones are not going to be moldy.
In elementary school, there was a pomegranate tree in a corner of the playground, not on the school campus. It was on the other side, but we would climb the fence and pick pomegranates. And so I just remember picking pomegranates and very crudely, ripping them open and just staining your face and your hands and whatnot too. But it always reminds me of Waldorf school.
Oh, the famed Waldorf school.
But Lisa gave me a pomegranate as a gift.
Oh, yeah, that sounds like me.
Brought me one, and it was I think it was a Jupiter return or something. It was something around that where it was it was very Jupiterian, and it was
huge.
It was a huge pomegranate, and it lasted so long. I kept being I'm so bad when people give me food, produce gifts, I will say, not baked goods or whatever. I'm going to eat that right away. But if it's a produce gift and I have to figure out what I'm going to do with it, it can take me some time. And I feel I have let gifts spoil or have not used them as wisely as I could. And this one I was oh no, the pomegranate's not going to be good. And then I cracked it open and it was overflowing with seeds. And it was amazing.
This is a good gift guide thought, is where pummeling towards the holidays is just very it's very recession friendly and also romantic. I got you a basket of a pomegranate and a candle and a handkerchief and just I hope we make it through the war and famine and all of this. It gives very Little Women sort of Rococo painting sort of vibe. So but then I give a little produce, candle, handkerchief.
Fruit is in hospitality, pineapple is one of the most coveted fruits because it wasn't able to grow in a lot of places before we had the GMOs and farming systems that we have now. So it was considered to be one of the, it's an international symbol of hospitality is a pineapple. You see it in restaurants a lot, but fruit is considered to be a pretty I think a welcome gift in every culture. I don't think there's anyone where you bring fruit and they're can't believe they brought this fruit into my home.
Yeah, true.
Fruits. I'm been trying to use TikTok for good, and now I'm just getting better at cutting mangoes, and it's been my go-to now YouTube replacement of watching a 13-year-old teach me how to the things I keep stopping myself where I'm I'll just buy it prepackaged or store. And now I'm no, have a 13-year-old teach you how to cut this thing and break through fruit fears or different. I don't know.
Don't believe the wooden spoon hype on the pomegranates.
Oh,
I've never been able to make that work. I don't know.
I don't even know this.
People say that if you
thump
cut it and then you thump it with a spoon, that all the seeds just fall out. I've never been able to make it work, so I don't know.
Okay, maybe once I get to that phase of my fruit tutorials on TikTok.
When you're in your pomegranate era,
I'm also
let us know.
Yeah,
it stains so much, so I'm also scared to hit it. So it might be me just not doing it hard enough, but
giving it the thwack that it needs. Can you guys believe we're gonna start the new year with Mercury retrograde again, like we did
Yes.
fucking this year? Yes, it's like actually yes, that
Absolutely. No
yes,
questions asked.
it just feels it's so wildly like, is this just more this? I don't. It's a hard symbolic thing to miss that we're ushering in more Mercury retrograde energy into this year.
I personally kind of like it in a sense where I think that there is something like I don't want to be not in a I don't mean this in a bah humbug way. I mean this in its proximity to the holidays and as a kind of reminder of the like I keep writing down, it's very like Hallmark movie, but like the true meaning of the seasons and these kinds of things of like having grace with each other, knowing that everybody is trying to do the same thing at the same time. I feel like there's this like real, capitalist pressure to make this a time when nothing goes wrong and everything goes perfect and everything is and having Mercury retrograde there is like, no, this is real life. This is the period of time. This is a thing. You are not owed a perfect picture. You are not owed I'm thinking of like the Grove. I'm not talking about us. I hope everyone who listens to this podcast holidays are wonderful and your travel plans go smoothly and nothing bad ever happens to you. But in general, just the like, you know what I'm saying? That it feels divinely timed in that sense.
Well, I think that as far as the holidays go, I think that kind of like what Stevie was saying about like finding alternative ways to give gifts and like, I love lotto scratchers, bottles of wine, fruit, like bringing a dish, bringing a thing of homemade cookies. I make like herb oil sometimes, like just things that you can do that aren't super expensive and that like might not go to waste at like a party or whatever. And I think because the difficulty of having Mercury retrograde during this time is like, think about, I don't even remember, like it was last year or the year before of like so many packages not getting delivered and like the mail being a thing that like they're overwhelmed or understaffed or whatever. And it's like, it must have been during COVID when it was like, I can't remember, when like I had to send my mom's gift like 3 times and I kind of just wished I had like packed something myself instead of ordering something online to get shipped because it ended up being late and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that's something to be mindful of during this time. And like, ask if you can lend a hand, if you like find a cool pine cone, like, decorate that for your house or bring it in, like those kind of things instead of forcing like more trucks and pollution and whatever. It's like people don't expect, perfectly wrapped, prepackaged, etc.
Yeah, starting the New Year's in Mercury retrogrades 2 years in a row, it's like it feels really symbolically for the year. I hear people say for New Year's Eve, like it's the energy we're bringing into this year, and it might be more adaptable, leaving space for change, like going with the flow, like not forcing things too. I think that's been a big change that was really sprung from the pandemic times and is still leading into now. It's like, yeah, if it costs you $2 million to go home for 4 days, like maybe there's an alternate plan that can be made with you and your loved ones or something that's like just an easier lift, especially, last year we entered in with Capricorn. This year we're going to enter in with Sagittarius, but from, retrograding back from Capricorn and Sag. So like hitting both those signs. It's still like very still in that same world. I'm actually like, I probably should have listened to our Mercury retrograde episode from last year because I remember at that time, like, I think we looked ahead and I was like, oh, we're having something kind of similar the following holiday season as well. So it might be interesting to even maybe look back at that episode or that time of Mercury retrograde as well and see what was going on. I'm sure people say this every year, but I can't believe that was a year ago. because it feels like a year ago, but also not a year ago.
It feels like not a year ago, but also feels like a million years ago.
It feels like maybe longer than a year, but also I feel like it was yesterday.
Well, I think it's interesting because this Mercury retrograde, and we'll go through the stats if we're just going into it, but I think that it's not in, we've had a lot of like, it's not in any sign that it is, we're not in like a domicile sign, we're not in a exalted sign, and there's something about that to me that feels like, yeah, it's the, I don't know, stuffed travel, obviously, with Sagittarius and the time of year that it is, at least for us here, you know, in the West.
Mhm.
But also these kinds of like, yeah, financial, you know, you might not get the Christmas bonus that you had last year, or the same kind of thing, or the like, yeah, I don't know.
Like, do they still give those out anymore?
Yeah, I don't
like
know. I don't know.
The Christmas bonus? Sounds like the
Or like-
50s.
or Christmas party or something, you know,
Yeah.
something along those lines of like, you know, I don't know, but it doesn't feel as like, I don't know, maybe the signs to me, because they feel such big picture signs or big system signs, that it's, I know it's still a Mercury retrograde, but it doesn't feel as, I don't know, as like annoying. I don't know.
Detriment. Just
That's true. That's true. That's
so,
true.
and I think I forget Sag's detriment in
But then that
Mercury 'cause
almost feels, it almost feels like then it's like a double negative, that it's like, oh, maybe
right.
that's
Maybe it
actually
evens
like
out.
what you want.
Maybe Sag
like.
needs a Mercury retrograde to like
Yes.
take that pause of, you know, whatever it is it wants to
Yeah.
fill out. You know, that's where Sag can kind of meander or like ramble, right, with Mercury, which is great because sometimes we want to hear it. And I think that's why I forget sometimes Sag is not as happy there, but also, I don't know. I know so many like natal Mercury Sag people, and I like, I'm always interested in their takes. Maybe it's also then the refining and regularity and, you know, details and sticking to a schedule or like whatever it is that might up with Sag stuff, especially in retrograde times.
I think we talked about last time the Earth planets being like more structural things. I think specifically Capricorn, like, I think it's definitely, because last one, I think it was like the rain times, and
Yep.
we talked about
we were
pipes.
together on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
In the rain.
We talked about pipes bursting and like the structure of the city not being able to like withstand as much water as we were getting and all of that kind of stuff, which we've seen repeated like throughout this retrograde in different spots in earth signs and different like places around the globe and stuff. And so I think like being mindful of the structure of some of those things, like even if it's more of the oopsie, like text message Mercury retrograde issues, like, you know, say like Julie and I produce a live show together and say I like say something nasty about one of the producers, but I like put it in the producer's text. Like, instead of being like the, oh my God, oopsie, like I just sent this to the person it's about kind of thing. It's one of those more where it's like, oh, this actually affects like the integrity of the structure we've built, like our system as producers and out like what we have to do and who, you know. So I think thinking about those things as implications in some of these things might be like a help to at least like framing it for yourself if things come up. Because I think, you know, when we have car trouble, it's not like, we're not like, oh, the structure of my week has changed. You're just like, fuck, I'm late to work. Like, ah. And it's like, no, what you're upset about is like, there's like long form things that you now have to figure out how to do, like get a bus schedule, get a Uber, like whatever you have to do in those situations.
When speaking to like the structural integrity, it also would go to like, you know, I think Capricorn is also the ways that we feel like not necessarily abandoned, but that we can kind of feel on our own and that we have to bear the total responsibility. And so something like your transportation example is one where it's like, if you're in a city that is not equipped to support like these things, now you're on your own for trying to figure out create structures that don't exist in a place where they should have structures or whatever. So you might also be feeling where responsibility is put on you, where you are now having to like, I don't know, power through Yeah.
Yeah, I
Something
think
al-
Sag and Cap can feel really sometimes like very alone and pioneering, and like even though there's like people around, they usually are on their own trek, and I think that's what they have in common. And I think that's a good reminder too, maybe during this Mercury retrograde time, as we're experiencing Mercury retrograde in both these signs, that there is a team we can call on as well if we are feeling like aimless, or we don't know like how we want to see it, or maybe we need notes on something, like, you know, I have this idea but I want, you know, some trusted opinions. I think Cap is really good at leading a team and delegating and calling on the resources where they might lack, even though they, I think, sometimes can on that flip, like you mentioned, like get into like it's just me holding up these walls and doing it all on my own. And I think Sag too, not that it doesn't know it, but I think it just might overlook that sometimes. It's like, oh, but I actually have like community and resources while I'm out here, you know, in a cloud in space, you know, floating through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think resources is such a good word for this too, because I think it's similar to like the gift giving stuff. You know, I like my aunt owns a gift shop, and so a lot of times people be like, "Oh, you have this nice cream or whatever," and I'm like, "Oh, it's because like, you know, she has products she's trying to get rid of."
Mm-hmm.
But it's like for like I love it, you know, and then for her it's like a resource. The same with like growing up in a restaurant. Like I I could always find a bottle of wine to give somebody or whatever. Like, what is something that you have that you can kind of provide in that way? And sometimes it's like offering to help clean up, or offering to, you know, like what you like knit or you crochet, or you have, you know, a bunch of old books that you can paint really pretty, or, you know, it can be anything. Like, what resources do you have?
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about
Yes.
when this is happening. This Mercury retrograde, Capricorn season 2023. I mean, I guess it's not technically Capricorn season. I have it written in Capricorn, but as we discuss it, we'll retrograde back into Sag. But the station's retrograde on December 12th, 2023 at 8 degrees and 29 minutes of Capricorn. We will be in the shadow phase beginning November 25th. So this really does span at least a good, you know, the holiday season, at least here in America. Sorry to make this centered on us, but that's where we're recording from, and that's where my brain goes.
And it was what we were taught to do
And
in our entire lives
exactly.
as well. So
Sorry.
we're aware, we're trying to break. But I think that's a good, just a quick, like, what is the shadow? Maybe if you've heard this a million times, this is the degree. Basically, the key degrees that we're going to hear is like when it starts and when it ends. So once it leaves the shadow is when it comes back to the degree that it's already passed over. So it's if you look on like I feel like there's good like images with like little calendars. It's like it's almost like where Mercury is dancing in between the degrees. So stuff that might be present during the Mercury retrograde might start kicking up on this November 25th in and around, right? Like it's usually never like on the date exact, but where these degrees of Mercury are beginning.
Like, especially that Saturday after Thanksgiving. Like a lot of people might be traveling. I know I am. So like a lot of people might be at the airport or on the road or whatever the thing is. And also the Sunday, like I know that's a huge travel day. So it might be one of those things where you're like, wow, my flight to X destination like was so simple, and then you're like, oh fuck, I can't get home, or you know, I know we've seen numerous like potential strikes for the airlines and all of those kind of things. I hope for that in the workers and the labor perspective, but I'm not like hoping for that for everyone's holiday plans.
Yeah.
So, you know,
and this was reported in September. I remember seeing this, that airports are back to pre-pandemic passenger levels also in 2023. So, you know, more people, more frustration, high gas prices, all that stuff. It's
also more competition,
spreading disease still, like flu and COVID, and also just like a cold, you know?
Absolutely. And reminder of like, you know, ordering Ubers earlier, having longer lines at the coffee thing when you're there, whatever it is.
Taking those ginger and lemon shots and getting everything, and like also probably I don't know, it's controversial to say, but like getting your vaccine.
Yeah, getting a booster, wearing a mask, things that for whatever, again, for colds, for everything,
Yeah.
or just sharing the space with a bunch of people that you don't
Mhm.
normally do that with. So we stationed retrograde on the 12th. Shadow phase begins the 25th of November, and we stationed direct on the 1st of January 2024 at 22 degrees and 10 minutes of Sagittarius at 7:07 p.m. here, at least Pacific Standard Time. And that's what Stevie was mentioning. The shadow phase begins when we begin at the degree that Mercury will station direct at. And then once Mercury passes the degree that it's stationed retrograde, we are considered out of the shadow phase, which will happen around January 20th, 21st, depending on where you're at. And that will be when Mercury passes that 8 degrees and 29 minutes of Capricorn. Once again, we will be out of that zone that Mercury has passed between during this retrograde period. I think it's interesting that this retrograde happens, it not exact with the new moon itself, but it is on the same day that we have a new moon in Sagittarius. I have the retrograde station chart.
I can
I was
make
like,
you a host, or if you want to
sure.
share it to me, how do I?
Sure.
This is a good reminder that you can watch us on YouTube. What's your sign podcast is our handle over there. I've changed you to be the host.
Okay,
and you can
let me
screen
share my screen.
Yeah, let's look at this bad boy.
Okay, that's fine. How do I share screen? Okay, it's just that. Okay, we're sharing. Here is the chart for our Mercury retrograde station happening, as I said, December 12th, 2023 at 11:09 p.m. So this is later in the day from the new moon in Sag, but we are still in there. I think this again is set for Los Angeles, so you'll need to adjust this for your time zone. This might happen again on the 13th, depending on where you're at. But we still will be, on the heels of this new moon in Sag, and I think that having that, we have this Sun, Moon, Mars, not exact again, but that feels very
pretty close.
Yeah, it feels very close, and it feels very energetic and enthusiastic and passionate. But then having that kind of Mercury retrograde of being like in Capricorn, kind of maybe keeping us from getting too far ahead of ourselves, that we have, maybe the best of intentions or plans, but that might not be how it shakes out, I also think that we have, looking to what is aspecting Mercury specifically. We will have, and we can go over this later with the transits of it too, but we do have a trine to Jupiter in Taurus, very, very earthy. Venus will be in Scorpio. We'll also have a sextile to Venus in Scorpio. So it does feel like that Mercury is there to, I don't know, I don't want to say reality check, because that also feels very on the nose for Capricorn, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's like some support in this, and maybe that is, like when we have the benefics in a positive aspects to this Mercury, retrograde, it's like, yeah, like maybe it's like a welcomed rest, or like a welcome reevaluation, or like that kind of taking stock of whatever it is that Mercury wants to reorganize. Like we always talk about like the rewords that come up with retrograde, which is like revisit, reorganize. Like it can be a nice time for travel if you want to like reconnect with people, or again, leaving grace and space for problems that could arise or delays. But I think because it will, eventually move back into Sag too, I think of like Sag is very like vision building, and then Capricorn is really like implementing. So I think this is like this whole Mercury retrograde time, which fits with the end of the year. Maybe you want to launch something in the beginning of the year. This, maybe you have a slow holiday time where you're not doing much. Maybe you're like, oh, fuck it, I'm skipping, like all of the stuff. Or maybe it's a time you go home and like don't have friend distractions, or you have like a little more space. This could be a really good time to like maybe just like put your head down and, think about what it is that maybe it's something you want to launch in the new year, or maybe it's just something you wanted to wrap up that like, fuck, it's the end. And like, I still have 3 more books on my I wanted to read list. You know, maybe it's just finding that time to like, I don't know. Sag and Cap can be so goal oriented. Not that it's a great time for something new with Mercury retrograde.
No,
So maybe
but
something that we're wrapping up or that's been cooking and simmering that is ready to have some life brought into it.
I think goal oriented is a good one to keep in mind, though, because I think with this Sun, Moon, Mars conjunction at the station, we are going to be really, this to me is also like a real like emotionally motivated and ego motivated and passionate, and again, which is like exciting, but I think also remembering that everyone is coming from their own place of being really impassioned, really, you know, whatever. It's like thinking again, just the myriad of holiday movies where it's like the impassioned plea of like, I gotta get home to see my son for Christmas. And it's like, yeah, everyone does the kinds of remembering that like, yeah, we're all coming from that emotional place, and it's not necessarily a again a bad thing, but remembering everybody has a maybe not shared goal, but has as an intent
similar,
a story or whatever it is. And I think Sag too loves this, is weaving the narrative and making a story and connecting these things too.
I think that with Capricorn, you know, as far as goals and stuff, I think for me the way I see this is like Capricorn just starts kind of walking up the hill. It just kind of starts going. It's like, well, you know, I'll kind of figure out what the top is when I get there. And Sag is like looking for the exact like target that they want to hit. And I think like the archer, we see the bow, like you pull back first before you go forward. And so I think we're seeing a little bit of this like, oh, I'm walking up the hill and like, oh, maybe I want to like pull back a little bit to see if I can see the top, and then pull back, release, and like go fly, go sky high, you know? And so I feel like there is this like backwards motion that might be a little more uncomfortable for Capricorn, that might be a little bit more like something as Sag might be a little bit more used to or able to handle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, huge news during this Mercury retrograde is we're gonna have a Cazimi on the 22nd at 0 degrees of Capricorn with the 0 degree sun. Because that's, you know, Cazimi is that 17-minute close conjunction, like Mercury in the heart of the sun. Shit, I don't know if we've ever recorded or talked about charts when we had a Mercury retrograde Cazimi. Maybe we have, but like it feels
they have the internal and the external. And I keep forgetting. There's like a way to remember it, and it's inferior and superior. And I think inferior is when it crosses in between the sun and us, and superior is on the outside. And one of them I think is normally retrograde. This is technical knowledge coming from like my brain and not a book. So double fact check me on everything. But yeah, I think we do see them frequently happening.
Yeah, I just don't remember like if we've talked about, or like
I don't think we've talked about it. No,
but it's also at this 0 degrees of Cap, which with cardinal degrees are world points. With anytime we're at 0 degrees at a cardinal, so Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. So that just also feels very important. It feels like if I mean, I can't tell you what will happen that day or not, but there does feel like something, you know, cardinal does start new things. So maybe there is something that comes to your mind of like where you do want to put your energy into next year, where the things that you're interested in. I don't know, but it does have this very back to kind of like pioneering, like, you know, Capricorn is at that highest point often, and world angles are just said to be just contain a lot of like, it could be something that really makes an impact that a lot of people see is when we hear about world angles stuff. So could be cool to keep in mind for that December 22nd date that we have a Cazimi on that date at that 0 degrees. Can we pull up the chart for that?
Here we are, Cazimi'd.
Okay, well, for our chart, that's pretty fun up there. Oh, and God, and Mars is not, and it's not like not really in conjunct, but it's just like so close to it. Visually looks very like, God, Mars is just so the end of this year. There's like Mars is very present, especially with the Aries eclipse stuff.
Absolutely. But I also think it's like there to kind of like keep that fire stoked and cheering on this Capricorn. I think that predominantly, and use this word positive, easy transits that can go either way. When we have things in flow, that doesn't mean that they're going to necessarily go good, but that means that they are working together. But our opening transit is a trine to Jupiter at 5 degrees of Capricorn on the 18th. We have a sextile to Saturn on the 21st, right before this cazimi. We have a cazimi on the 22nd. Mercury, with the exception of a square to Neptune, is in mostly positive aspects through this retrograde. And so I do think that while again that could be travel delays compounded because everything is all of these things working together, there's a weather problem, there's a strike, there's a this, that to me also could be very earth trine too. But it does feel like that we are making progress. Something is there is potential for something to be going down here. And I think having that Mars support, while it's not conjunct exactly and not out of sign, we do a few days later get a Mercury conjunct Mars once it's moved back into Sag. So it does feel like, hey, well,
it's like you said, kind of like, I could see for myself, I'm not flying, so it's easy for me to make this statement, but like, oh wow, like the workers are on strike, and like I see like progress being made here, even if I'm not actually getting to go to my destination kind of thing. Like, oh, I like respect that. And so I'm like not going to cross the picket line or whatever, however it works out in your life. I hope that everybody gets on their flights. I'm not trying to like speak that into existence in any means, but like, I don't know. There is something about like a big storm that brings people together. And I think
absolutely,
we see a lot of, I'm thinking of like comedy stuff where I'm like, I did a show in Chicago at like a bar I shouldn't have been at, and someone offered me a ride home, and I probably wouldn't have got home otherwise because it was like a big storm. And it's like, it's kind of a strange occurrence in LA for you to like offer a random person a ride, because we don't have those events happen as frequently. And so there is a more of like an individualist like community here in stand-up. I don't know about in other things, but I feel like, that to me was like, oh wow, like the Chicago scene, they really have this whole community and stuff. So, thinking about those things and applying them, not just having dad shovel the driveway as usual and mom cook the food, like maybe we can all be a part of a community and make those things come together moments instead of split aparts.
Well, I think we talked about this similarly with the like, this is giving, and it's funny because it's like, oh, Capricorn and Cancer giving our kind of like 4th of July vibes too, where it was like, you might be the one that has to like be on the barbecue or whatever it is. The thing, like someone's gonna need to do it, and you might be the one, and that might be not what you've ever done before. That might not be your normal sort of thing, but it also is like a memory. It's a coming together. It's a thing. And not to say that you have to take that on, but there is also like I don't know. I think in those moments, especially if it's like, weather, strikes, whatever, we are seeing other people push themselves in a way that reminds us that we too can do things on a different scale. We don't all have to be, putting out a literal fire or, fighting in something or whatever. But it is those reminders of like, yeah, we might be able to do a little bit more, push ourselves, grow more than we think we're capable of. I think in this LA chart specifically, we're having this Pisces rising too. I think we've talked about having another kind of wet, watery winter, and that could be something too that we're contending with. Again, sorry, that's for us, but I don't know if that applies to anyone else.
No, I think,
well, they're going to be drier, I guess, like we'll be getting like cooler or warmer and wetter, and like a lot of people will be feeling maybe polar vortex, but not as snowy. I don't know.
The East Coast has been having it already, so I think it's like more of a seesaw effect of like,
Yeah.
like they're getting wet rain and then like us. I don't know how it'll go down as far as like snow and ice and storms and stuff. But yeah.
I think a lot of places are not going to have the typical kind of like weather that they have had at holidays as well. I think that's with this Capricorn, Mercury retrograde in Capricorn, as you were talking about structures and systems, Earth, all of this with that trying to Jupiter and Taurus. And we have this, in this Kazemi chart, Moon Jupiter conjunction. Two to me is also like you might not have snow in some of the places that you do. I think there could be like storms and awful, but I think that also is something that in terms of the like, oh, I'm going home, I'm so excited to be in this place that's different than this place that I came from, and it might be not that different.
Well, we also
They're
might
like,
not
climate
have
change, JK.
Yeah.
Like you're never getting a white Christmas ever again, bitch.
We might also not have the structures in those places. We might have snowmobiles, but not drains, or you know what I mean? Like, so those kind of things being structures.
Yeah. All kinds of stuff. But yeah.
I feel like since Mercury, the Mercury retrograde of it all does ask for the reevaluation. And I think with the sun and Mars all together, and not exact with Mars, but it's very presently there with this, for us with this Pisces rising Saturn right there. It can also just feeling like asking for, like a different approach of how we're leading people too, or like how we're maybe like educating people. I'm sure a lot of people are seeing their families for the first time after a very charged year. And maybe you're talking about a lot of things for the first time. Like I've talked to a lot of friends who are not really excited to see their grandparents and talk about the things that are happening in the world. But I think Capricorn's really good at setting the example and like, not that this has to be their job, but I think they can like really lead by example a lot of times. So maybe coming in a very, Capricorn goal-minded point of view. I do have the Sabian symbols for our major degrees.
Yeah. This just reminded me in this Kazemi chart, we do have, again, not exact, but a Venus-Uranus opposition. And this made me think of, because it's in these Venus in Scorpio, opposite Uranus and Taurus, and this kind of coming on the heels of our Venus retrograde and those Venus Uranus squares, and now the kind of like, I don't know, the post Barbie divorced summer, and then being in the holidays post all of that, and kind of a value check again, or how have things changed? How are you changed? What's new and different, and how are we reevaluating continuingly? Hit us with the sabes.
Well, for this, because we have this Kazemi, I have the 0 degree Capricorn one, and the Sabian symbols are mythical images for each degree of the zodiac. They're pretty cool. Check out the ones for your natal placements. It can be very interesting, but also sometimes the Sabian symbols have kind of dated language, so I'm going to update this one a bit, but we'll say an indigenous chief demanding recognition for 0 degrees of Capricorn. This is from James Burgess's website, but basically it's talking about how people might take credit for your work, or take credit for, the things that you're giving out. So demanding the proper recognition, taking credit for what you need. I'll read this little thing here. When the community security is threatened by those who can and will claim a position of authority and take command, observing the effects of unrestrained personal power. A body must have a head, a group must have a leader. Various experiments are still in progress to examine how best to choose a person best suited to that role, how often the leader should be replaced, and the scope of authority granted. In some cases, the dominant male makes his claim and decides his own and the extended power and influences he chooses to command. This usually seems inappropriate in times of peace, yet becomes an absolute necessity and the group's survival requires it. This is a true on a ship at sea, and it is true in wartime. It is always a real question whether the risk of war throws up belligerent leaders or the leader's belligerence is the very reason for the risk. So, sometimes we need some guidance.
Can we go over what degree that I feel like I'm feeling this now and I want to see what's there now? What
0 degrees Capricorn.
What is anything there? Nothing. Oh, no, nothing.
Not as we're recording.
Well, I have
maybe a placement.
I have stuff near there. Yeah.
When it's been getting sextiled by all of the Scorpio ingresses, So you might be feeling the like.
I have Uranus there too, so okay.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Mhm. But I mean that all of that to me tracks of getting a little sextile ping.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some, I think sometimes we do need proper leadership, and also like just discerning the noise of, people that claim they're the proper leadership as well,
Oh, thoughts are clicking, Stevie. You're really Can I send this episode to a few people?
I mean, yeah, yes. Yeah, an authority requires demands respect most effectively through an uncompromising inner integrity. Yeah, and I think we can't ignore the symbolism of an indigenous chief, someone that was maybe there before some other leaders want to come in and say that they're the leaders too. So I think also a recognition of history and who was there before you. And also, I feel like this comes up a lot when we have fire season. Like, why are these fires raging out of control? It's like, well, indigenous culture, they did have more controlled burns, but we've like done away with like earth knowledge, which also feels very Capricorn. And, like, why is this happening? It's like, well, there were ways in very natural ways that we worked with things that feel really big and scary, but Earth is scary. Earth has so much crazy, scary shit happening at any given time. But like, let's not add the humans are the reason why the Earth is scary. Like the Earth has enough scariness and beauty all at once.
I'm thinking of the knowledge that someone might have in a situation of like thinking of like Earth stuff, before an invasive species of plant was introduced or before animal was introduced to an ecosystem that doesn't necessarily belong there, but has a bunch of benefits for humanity, but maybe not for like the Earth or our planet. And so I think even using those ideas in a situation of like you have new neighbors and they don't know where the trash is, or like trying to figure those things out. And so I always get my neighbor's mail, and it's like it's I've lived here for so long that it's like a big pain, but when someone's new, I don't try to be like, oh, here's your mail. Like I try to just kindly say like, just so you know, like it comes to our house sometimes and da 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 da.
Well, I think that's a good reminder because at this same time we have, Sun, Mercury at 0 degrees Capricorn, and then we have Pluto at 29 degrees. We're getting ready for that ingress back into Aquarius in the new year. And I think having like the full kind of span of, I don't know, the ideas of power structure and how they're established and how you can be at kind of the beginning and the end too of something. I don't know. That stands out to me as interesting.
Yeah. Maybe I'll give you this 22 of Sag because it's the degree where we're starting with the shadow. And I feel like it might be the energy. I feel like when we like start with the shadow, it's like the degrees that will be covered later. I feel like it's like the symbology we don't know quite yet until the retrograde happens. And I feel like this 22 degrees might feel mad different and probably should and would from November 25th to, January 1st, like in this time period. But we have immigrants entering for 22 degrees of Sag. Again, this is from James Burgess's website, and any big change demands of us that we hold firm in the deepest parts of our integrity while adapting to new conditions. This image feels fairly straightforward. Immigrants entering it's a change. Like there are a lot of, people usually immigrate for reasons to better their life, usually, or they're escaping somewhere that is dangerous or whatever it might be. But there is it says during the stages of transition, we must find a way not only to strengthen the faith we have in essence self, but also be willing to adopt new ways of being and new perceptions. This applies to whether we move home to a new town, change jobs, or join a social group. And most particularly applies when we move to a new level of consciousness. There are new realms to discover and new beliefs and realizations to embrace. And these can be very disturbing and rattle the status quo, but we must not lose the sense of who we are at our core, is from James' website. So yeah, it might really feel like come the holiday times that we're entering something new or we want to enter something new.
Thinking about how like you're traveling anyway, just even that I feel like is a
very
going
saggy.
to. I know I haven't been home much since pre-COVID, and like my mom talks about stuff and I'm like, I have no idea what that place is, or like I don't know what you're talking about. And so it is kind of coming back but being new, like being a immigrant, so to speak. I mean, I'm not technically, but like I don't belong there necessarily anymore.
Well, I think that also fits again with this kind of holiday through line too, of going, okay, well, if you might feel now out of place in a place where you once felt not that, and what does that make you, what does that bring up? It can bring up, you know, feelings of, you know, judgment towards the people that you are with, and going like, oh, I can't believe that this is who they are. But you also need to be, you know, again, like it's saying, kind of staying true to yourself, of going like, oh, okay, like this is maybe not the place for me anymore, or whatever that might be, or the like I'm on a new thing, and we're in different places.
Yeah, and I think this too, also, maybe if you want to, if like you look around, you're like, God, I don't want to be in this space come next Thanksgiving time. Like this could spark, like maybe you do want to move, or maybe like, I don't know. For me, going home for the holidays, so my family's on their worst behavior every year around the holidays. So I bring the stuff that I like Midwestern traditions, like home with me in California. So I think too, like you're choosing to immigrate, and if we just like on the smaller scale move or like go somewhere different because it's going to better your life, it's big decision, and it, you know, it's gonna hurt some people, and it really like emboldens the other people, like if you're moving with your family or moving with a partner. So I think too, like what's gonna best serve your future is up for introspection, especially of course during Mercury retrograde.
That just also reminds me that I watched Elemental finally.
Oh my god!
On Lisa's rec, and I did weep, of course. Like in a way, not uncontrollably, but in the way where it was like, oh, I didn't even. Sometimes I feel like I'll like start to cry and then let myself go, and this was like, oh no, it was like, oh, I didn't even try. This was happening.
Did you relate to the fire character?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the fact that once I saw that
Ember,
it was fire.
Cute name also.
I know.
All
so
of the
cute.
names are really cute. Wade.
I watched it on the plane, so I only saw half, and I was like, not in a normal state. But I need to finish. I really, because I'm not a Disney Pixar person, but I was really digging Elemental.
I feel like it's also not. It's a little like, I don't know. It's a little spicier than a normal Disney. There was like some jokes in there that I was like, oh, well, I can't believe they kept this in. Okay, cool. But yeah, I think if you are looking for I don't know if comfort watch is maybe the right one, because it is emotional,
it's for babies.
Yes, but I'm like, yeah, it's a comfort watch. It is a comfort watch in a I think in like a simplistic way to like soothe whatever you are feeling in these moments. If that is where you are at, I think this is a really nice one to remind you about all of the things that Sabian symbol talks about. Yeah. So
I think Elemental too, there is definitely some stuff that kind of leads this, dating people who are different kind of narrative, that I think definitely certain people don't like about it. But I find that no matter where you come from, whatever your background is, whatever kind of food you eat, whatever, like every family is going to be different. And so there's always something for someone to learn when they go into their partner's home for the first time, like their parents' house, or like you're always going to have to eat something you haven't had before or don't like. You're always going to have to, it doesn't matter if you're both white or if you know what I mean, like it's always going to be not your mom's. It's always going to be like, so there's always something to learn from that. You don't necessarily have to be the farthest level different to learn something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe we'll go to back to the direct chart after this, but do you want to pull up the retrograde chart one more time, maybe when we look at this? All right, so we have that 8 degrees Cap retrograde chart, and so for this 8 degrees of Capricorn, which I love, is an angel carrying a harp. Everything flows within us and around us. When we hear the universal sound of this action, then we are in alignment with life itself. Being awakened, being clear, being in tune with love and harmony. It's all very worldly success following the spiritual attunement as well. I mean, this feels all really I don't know, like maybe this is your sign to like maybe put on some harp music while you're working or while you're going into space, or like, you know, that we love angels, angel numbers, angel guardians here on this pod. So maybe working more with like angel things. I'll try to find that link, but and I don't know how like accurate this is, but it was like per birthday had a different angel. We've all been group chatting about our various angels. So
Angels.
maybe working a bit with angel energy.
Yeah. I think it's also that, like, you know, Capricorn. I think it's funny because, you know, in the tarot, Capricorn's card is the devil. And then we also have this angel. And I think that, you know, choosing to listen to the angel on your shoulder versus the devil on your shoulder, and also keeping that in mind in terms of like the, you know, is as much as I think this makes me think of the Sag Mercury in detriment of it, like being like, don't start shit just to start shit. Like this is the our philosophies and our things like that matter and are powerful, but if they aren't also trying to kind of get you to this place where you feel like you are in flow and you are in touch with you know, the mysteries and love and divine workings of the universe, then like, I don't know, fucking keep it to yourself. Like this isn't the time, or it's like, that's not helpful.
Possibly no one cares also.
Yes.
Like
yes.
no one might care about your like
yes
your gripes and shit.
And it's your piece, it's your feeling of connection with that, and it's other people's as well. And so maybe if you aren't feeling that, looking to what other people are doing that seem to have that, or whatever, like, oh, how is this person doing this? This is someone who seems like they're in touch with this. What is it that they're doing? What is it that they believe? What is it there? Or if those are the things that do that for you, then staying focused on that frequency, whether that be through, you know, putting on your soundtrack before you get out of the car, before you go to a holiday event, before you know, coming back to that, having a mantra, noticing your angel things, whatever it is, but whatever it keeps you kind of focused and centered on, that is the target, not whatever.
I keep having people kind of in the spirit of what you just said, like I keep having people mention like, oh, you've been doing this and you have this and this, and like I personally don't feel put together. And so I've also heard other people asking like, oh, how'd you get to whatever, and the person's like, I'm not doing well, like I don't know what you think I have or whatever. And so I think a lot of it is like perspective based. And with angels, I always think of like above, obviously. I mean, I'm conditioned to, not obviously. But so I think, you know, if there is a way to kind of like take yourself and other people out of it and form a more objective, like sometimes I go somewhere and I'm like, I've been wanting to do this thing for so long, and then I get there and I'm like, why? Like, why did I think that I wanted to do this? This doesn't fit me. This isn't a match for me. And so like having those moments of clarity of like, it's not rejection. I don't fit in here. Like this doesn't make, you know, this doesn't make sense. Like those and helping you define where you want to go in that way by like taking more of a bird's eye view. Because I feel like sometimes when you tell someone like, how'd you get this? It kind of takes away from their accomplishments in some ways. And so being mindful of doing that, instead maybe saying like, I'm so proud of like this for you or whatever. I have also had people tell me like, oh, you did this thing, like that's so deserved or whatever. And that feels so much better. And I feel so much more inclined to tell them like, this is how I achieved that thing, rather than someone who goes, how'd you get that? You know?
Yeah. I mean, this symbol is really just asking for high attunement. And however that is accessible, or if you've never even thought of like what attunement is, or like, and I think attunement is just that sense where everything feels connected. And I think it is that very like rising above. I like this paragraph from this too, is our natural condition is enthusiasm. In the unsullied state of their original inception, all the simple potential potentialities of experience express true spirit, and this lets us know something of the eternal, unabated glory of just being. It is when we feel thoroughly enthusiastic about what we are doing and being that we know we have reached the exalted state. Yeah, I think too, like if you have some down winter holiday time to go to spiritual places, I don't know, it feels like very open to the, you know, you're already here listening to an astrology podcast, so like open yourself up maybe to a very woo space. I'm thinking, I was just at a crystal shop and I saw some tuning forks. I'm thinking of the literal attunement. Like I think working Cap with natural sounds and things of nature and things of, you know, the earthly senses could also be. And back to the Venus Jupiter support of this day too. It's all benefic stuff. It's all like what makes you feel good and attuned and of your highest self. And sometimes that can be cutting the noise out. Like, okay, cool. I don't need. How did I get that? Who are you? Like, I don't talk to. I like it. That's not my space.
I also think the tuning fork is such a good example too. Like at Halloween Horror Nights, they had this exhibit or whatever, and you were allowed to use your phones, but it was like in the dark. And the whole time I'm thinking to myself, like, how are they going to beat the phones? Like, there's no way they can actually scare you because you can see light and you can see other people's stuff. But they would do these flashes that were so bright that they would like blind you for a second and then they could surprise you with stuff. And I was like, oh, I think the tuning fork is a very similar thing. Like the first time you hit it, it like, whoa, it like takes you out of everything for a second. And then you're like, oh, I hear the vibrations and all of those kind of things.
Yeah.
This just reminds me of something that I think of on very Capricorn and is like a hike. And this to me is like the top of the hike. And you'd think that would be like the end of a Capricorn degree. But I think 8 degrees Capricorn is very like you made it to the top of the mountain and you're taking in the view and you can see how far you came up and you're looking at the perspective. And this is like what you did all of that for. And
but how'd you get there though? Like, can I just follow each rock that you went on?
Yeah, absolutely. You can drive up there and look out too. But just being kind of at the top where it's quiet and it's clear and you have the perspective, you're impressed with yourself to go up there. You know, you still have to get back down and there's, you know, that there, but you know, like this is what you, I don't know, do that for and how that feels up there and how then that perspective goes with you the rest of the way, you know?
Yeah. Well, feeling good about yourself or feeling peace is a lot of work and it's not going to be easy and it will feel grueling. But I think also if there is a state where this is happening to like embrace it. Can we see the direct chart again, the January 1st? Because now I want to see it with all these symbols now kind of
let's
lurking.
Go. January 1st. And what do I have as the time on here? 7:07.
Oh, it's going to be on the transits on the chart.
Not on.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's showing on the like if you go back to transits.
Where? Okay.
Because we're in the 8-degree chart. If you click transits and then type in January 1st.
Up here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, yeah.
Got you. Yes. 22 degrees, 10 minutes, Sag.
Yeah. And then, and Mercury, or excuse me, and Mars yet again.
After the station, we have basically, I mean, and this makes sense, but I feel like this is a good Mercury retrograde. If you are unclear about like the literal transit functions of astrology and how these things happen, I feel like this is a very symmetrical. We are getting almost identical transits on either side when they station direct as when they stationed retrograde. So you really can see the like, we start here, we go here. This is shadow phase. This is shadow phase after we've stationed direct. So we get that station direct on the 1st. We get then one of the last transits that we have. We don't get this Mars conjunction quite exact, but we do get a Mercury square to Neptune at 25 degrees. And then we get a Mercury sextile to Saturn at a little bit further, and then we get that Mercury trine to Jupiter as we end and exit the shadow period. So this is a really good one. I feel like if you are learning astrology and are not clear about these things, look at these transits because they work.
Yeah. The Neptune square feels very like, okay, you just did the retrograde. Now, like, getting out of that idea fog, brain clouds, like dreaming phase, and then also in this very like Mars supported actualization phase, and also trining north node, sextiling south node. There's like, it feels very like all systems go for this once we start moving direct again later that day.
What are our this is a very like belief driven one to me, I think, too, of like what's investigating what we thought we knew, or what we thought was reality but maybe isn't. And again, that can be painful. That's bubble bursting. And I think especially again with that like Sag pointed arrow coming in there and going like, nope, but that's not it either. Nope, that's not it either. But I think it also is moving us forward and closer to that true kind of peace that we're seeking with that 8 degrees, because by the end of this shadow phase, once we go back through those transits again, I think it's interesting that we'll like see them with fresh eyes post retrograde in that post shadow, going like, now you're seeing this again after all of this stuff, and how do we reintegrate that and reframe our worldview?
Yeah, especially with Saturn squaring Venus too on top of it there. It's like, but actually, like, there's like, it feels very like now that follow-up questions of like, and now what? Or I think Saturn Pisces, this whole, we're still very early in it, but it does feel really aligning with what feels true for us, very Piscean in that nature. So yeah, I feel like this Mercury retrograde, as they usually are, is very right on time for probably whatever it is happening in your life or in global life.
Back up your stuff.
Well, yeah.
Extra time, extra mental, physical,
see what's happening in your
space.
chart too. If it's in money places, doesn't mean that there will be unexpected costs, but like, don't we love just being prepared, and especially with Capricorn, Sagittarius sort of things?
Absolutely. But we've been through retrogrades before. We'll go through them again, and it'll be absolutely fine.
Yes. Cool.
Thank you for listening.
Happy Mercury retrogrades. Give yourself time. Double, triple check those reoccurring fees, because every time we bring that up, we get at least 5 DMs of like, oh my God, I didn't know I was paying for Roku 6 times or whatever, like whatever it might be. So, clear out your shit and get checking.
Hell yeah. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.